It is the Matt Mosley Show, and as advertised, the original 88 Pro Football Hall of Famer, a longtime friend of mine, Drew Pearson, joins us. And Drew, as we broadcast across all of Arkansas, Louisiana, major portions of Texas, it made me think of like y'all's barnstorming basketball tours you used to do across really probably the whole country. But and I'm always fascinated with that because y'all had so many great basketball players, including yourself. But Drew, welcome to the Mosley Show on the E Radio Network, and it's great to have you. And I mean, we are in major Cowboy territory, and I know there's a lot of excitement about getting to hear from you. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, you got it, Matt. You know, we've been friends for a long time, so you call my name, I'll be there. The only other guy I told that was Roger Staubach, and he wore me out, Matt, so call me anytime you need me. All right?
Yeah, Roger, and y'all have one of the more unique relationships in all of sports, and though you know, it's not like you were hanging out all the time away from football, yet when you went out there, I don't know if there's ever been a quarterback and receiver that were more on the same page, and Roger knew exactly what you were going to do, and you were always in his brain, and you knew how he was thinking. Drew, I can't, you know, I know there are great quarterback-receiver relationships, and again, there are probably even more that maybe even spend more time than y'all do together. But when it comes down to that symbiotic, whatever y'all had, do you remember, Drew? That's a good place to start. Do you remember, like, when that started? Was it almost immediate between y'all, or was there a moment that you know, you remember y'all having sort of a breakthrough? Because I don't know if there's any quarterback and receiver that I think about, you know, that has that sort of relationship on the field that you and Roger had. Do you remember when did it almost happen immediately between you two?
Oh no, it was developed. And it was developed through hard work. When I came in as a rookie as an undrafted free agent after I finished my senior year at Tulsa, I moved down to Dallas, and Gil Brandt hooked me up with an apartment right next door to the Cowboy practice field. And Gil was so good that the apartment that they had me rent, the balcony overlooked the Dallas Cowboy practice field parking lot. And I found out what kind of car Roger Staubach was driving. And I would sit on that balcony, Matt, and sometimes all morning, sometimes in the afternoon, waiting till he showed up at that practice field. And then I would run over there, and he couldn't figure out why I was always there when he was there. And so we got to work out up and down the field, because this was during the month of June, you know, and most of the guys back then, you know, we took time off before training camp, you know, because training camp was pretty rough back in the day. So a lot of the veterans weren't around. And so when Roger was there to work out, I was usually the only receiver there to work out with him. And we worked out up and down the field and doing things. And, you know, when it came time to head over to Thousand Oaks, Roger made a plea to the Cowboys to give me some more money. You know, my signing bonus was $150, okay? And that was already gone. And I was living in an apartment, and so I would do these workouts with Roger in the morning and then go to work at Merchants Van Lines to load semi-trucks in the afternoon. And Roger noticed in these workouts I was a little tired and stuff, so that's when he went to Gil Brandt to ask Gil Brandt to give me a little extra money so that I didn't have to work at Merchants Van Line and I could spend more time at the field. But a long story short, Matt, it was based on development and hard work. I ran routes up and down that field my rookie year, and Roger saw something in me. And you know what that gave me? A longer look in training camp because he vouched for me. And then in training camp, the development kept coming. And then when the season started, I'm third string after making the team. And I don't know what game it was in the season, Matt, but in consecutive weeks, Otto Stowe got hurt. The next week, Mike Montgomery got hurt. And then there was nobody left but me. And then I got in there, and it created that opportunity. But once I got in, Roger knew me, and I knew him because of the work that we put in before then.
Well, and I think it says a lot about you, even that when the transition happened to Danny and whoever else, Gary and other people you would have played with, like you never missed a beat in a sense because of all that time. But boy, people, you can't think about Roger honestly without thinking about you. And in a lot of ways, you think of Drew, and it's just interesting because it wasn't like y'all were together for ever, but that was such an extremely special time. And now that apartment complex.
Matt, let me cut you off because you made a good point earlier. It's not like we hung out after that, I'm not out hanging out with Roger, but the time we put in at that practice field, was very serious and very focused. Okay, but you're right. We're not buddies like that. Okay, Roger's got his thing to do. I was doing my thing. But when we hit that practice field, we were together. And that's basically, Matt, with all of us on the team, We knew what we were there for, but we all had our own personal lives outside of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
But Roger, the way he carried himself and the things he did in his personal life were an inspiration to me because you don't only taught me how to be a good football player, but they taught me how to be a pro, a professional, how to approach your job, how to handle your job, and how to embrace preparation. And that's how you become a pro. And that's what I learned being around guys like Roger and Bob Lilly and Bob Hayes. And think about it, man, Leroy Jordan, guys like that. And if you don't pick up on that and learn from them, not just be a football player, but how they carry themselves and how they had longevity in the NFL and sustained that, then you're missing the point of being there. And so it was a blessing that I played with guys that I played all around, not just Roger, but everybody that I played, including like Tom Landry.
Yeah. Well, by the way, we're being heard right now this afternoon in Arkadelphia, and of course that's where Cliff Harris played college football, and you and Cliff in some ways had similar stories. Now you played at a more well-known school at Tulsa than Ouachita Baptist where he played, but you both came in with not the huge status, not the big draft bonuses, and yet you both end up in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which and again, y'all are just such a special. Y'all all have stayed connected in a lot of ways. And what you said that fascinates me is people don't quite realize. I think we still have a hard time, especially younger people. They think all you did was play football, and as you said, you had an off-season job. First of all, you were already, before you were finished playing, you had already kind of made it into the media. You and Roger would end up both being, in your own respects, tremendous businessmen. But the truth is, Harvey Martin, I'm trying to think who was doing that with Harvey, but like Harvey, the great pass rusher for the Cowboys, was working at a sporting goods store in the shoe department in the off season. And so people don't understand y'all weren't getting these enormous checks back then. And by the way, you mentioned Gil. I guarantee you any extra money Gil found wasn't coming out of Gil's pocket, right? It was Gil.
Well, let me tell you, Matt, my signing bonus was $150.
Yeah.
You know what Gil Grant told me later?
What's that?
He said, I had a budget of $200 for you. Okay, if you would have held out longer, you could have got $50 more. but that was Gil Grant. That's the way it was back then. So
yeah,
we had to put up with that. But it didn't matter. We were the Dallas Cowboys, and as you mentioned, Harvey working at the sporting goods store, Coleman Borum. after me, Harvey, and Billy Joe, we came in together and we became friends and all that. And after the season ended, we lost to the Los Angeles Rams in the playoff game at Texas Stadium. Very disappointing in the second round of the playoffs. So we win that. The Super Bowl that year was in Houston. We really wanted to go there and all that. And but after the season ended, me, Harvey, and Billy Joe, we looked at our bank account. We had no money. So we had to go to work. And we went to the Zales Corporation, and we sat in the waiting area until the CEO of the Zales Corporation had a chance and had the time to meet with us. And he ended up giving us jobs. And, he put me and Harvey in a sporting goods store in North Park, Coleman Borum. And I'm a sports guy, Matt. So they put me in all the sports, basketball, football, all that. Uh-huh. I played them all. But Harvey was just a football player, all right? And just a defensive end. So they put him in shoes. And he's like 6'5", trying to put shoes on, ladies, tennis shoes and stuff like that. Back in the day in the shoe store, you put shoes on. You went in the back. You found out the size. You had to measure the feet and everything. You found out the size, and you go in the back, and you bring out 2 or 3 pair of shoes, and you sit there on this little stool, and you try to put them on. You would see Harvey down there, trying to put shoes on people. But anyway, this is what we had to do in the offseason to compensate for some extra money. And we couldn't wait till the training camp started. You know why? Because we couldn't wait to get that per diem, that $150 a week,
The per diem,
so that's the way it was back then. But you know what it is now.
Yeah.
CD Lamb signing bonus was 38 minutes. Okay. I'm just saying. Okay.
Well, and you got
if
Dak.
I had 38 million, Matt, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I go to Island Square.
Yeah. Well, you've done very well for yourself, but I hear you. And talking to Drew Pearson, the legend himself, on the Matt Mosley Show, and we got the Cowboys draft coming up. And Drew, I'd be remiss. You'll be involved in all kinds of draft activities out there at the Star. You famously, that your appearance at that draft, where you made the announcement of the Cowboys pick, and it was one of the great speeches. Really, I honestly think that's why they still do that, is because your speech was so well received that they're like, why don't we do this every year? And now they let former greats and former players come up and announce, starting maybe in the second round. It just was a huge hit. And I guarantee you, it used to be people of a certain vintage would ask you about the Hail Mary probably almost every day of your life. Well, now I would imagine you almost get asked about that draft appearance as much as you do the Hail Mary. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, Matt. I'm known that, like I said, for a guy that didn't get drafted, I'm known for the draft, When I get introduced, at presentations I got to make or something, I'm introduced as that draft day guy that did that draft day speech. And unfortunately, they expect that presentation that night to be that kind of fiery type of presentation, but it doesn't turn out that way all the time. But I was fired up that night, Matt, and first of all, I was happy and felt privileged and honored that the Cowboys asked me to do this. They could have asked so many guys, so many Hall of Famers, Ring of Honor guys that we got as part of Dallas Cowboy history, but they asked me to do it. So I was going to do it right. And on the way up there on the flight, of course, Matt flying first class, so I thought about what I was going to say. And I had it in my mind what I wanted to say. And there's 3 things I wanted to highlight. Number one was the fact that, playing for Coach Landry and all that, playing with the players that I played with and being an undrafted free agent. Those are the things I wanted to highlight in that. But I didn't have any idea I would be presenting it that way. And when it was my turn to make my presentation, I'm waiting in the back, and after the commissioner announced me, the fans are all booing me and all that because it's in Philly. And he comes backstage, man, and he asked me, are you ready for this? I said, Commissioner, I'm used to being booed in Philly. If it wasn't for the Philadelphia Eagles, I wouldn't have had a career in the NFL. You know what he said? He said, say that, you know? And so I walked down and came around to the podium. The boos got louder and louder, and I got more fired up. And by the time I got there, Matt, I was really fired up. And, you know, you're in the radio business and TV business and all that. You know, they tell you never have to yell into the mic. The microphone always picks you up, you know. But I was so fired up, I was yelling in that mic, spitting on that mic and everything else, Matt. And so after that, I got a standing ovation from the rest of the guys waiting in the green room for their turn. And they take me right back to the hotel. I get a standing ovation there. 2 security guards go up on the elevator with me to my room. That morning I leave and I get to the airport and I got a flight leaving out, Matt. And of course, again, first class. And the pilots know that I was on. The pilots said, we don't usually do this, but we have Drew Pearson on the flight. And he just gave this presentation at the draft. And it's okay if you want to stand up and give him a standing ovation. So all the people in the coach section, they unbuckled their seatbelts and they stood up and gave me a standing ovation right there on the airplane. So that's when I knew it was really big what I did, okay? Now I'm known for the draft. For a guy that was not drafted after 17 rounds of the draft, 452 players drafted in 1973. And signing for $14,500 and $150 signing bonus. And now you're known for the draft. And I've done 2 drafts since then. I've done one in Cleveland, and then I did the one here in Dallas when they had the draft here in Dallas. So I'm the draft guy.
That's right. You are the draft guy. And talking to Drew Pearson on the Matt Mosley Show, here on the E Radio Network. Speaking of the draft, have you had a chance to look at any of those wide receivers? The guy out of Arizona, because now they're in the Big 12, he interests me. Do you find yourself wanting the Cowboys, wanting Dak to get that one more wide receiver across from CD? Obviously, probably needs more firepower. I've heard you in the past say, hey, go get a running back. We all know they didn't do that last year, and I think paid the consequences. Meanwhile, Derrick Henry had another unbelievable year in the NFL, and it was another time that I think Jerry ended up looking really bad for how he approached things. As we get closer to the draft, what interests you, Drew? What I would think, knowing what position you played, that wide receiver is of particular interest. Do any of these players stand out to you, or is there anybody you're excited about?
Absolutely. You're speaking of wide receivers, Matt. This is a great class for wide receivers. And I think the Dallas Cowboys need to use that 12th pick in the first round, unless they make a trade to move up. But use that 12th pick in the first round to go after Matthew Golden from the University of Texas. This kid ran a 4.29, okay? A 4.29. Matt, if I had that kind of speed, I'd be in jail right now because I would have been illegal out there, okay, with that kind of speed. I ran a 4.6. And what we need more on anything, I think, we need a lot of things with this Cowboy football team to try to close the gap between where we are and where the Eagles are and where the Redskins or the Commanders, Commodores, whatever they are, where they are, okay? We got to close that gap. But when you look at them on their offensive side of the football, both of those teams have some great receivers to help their quarterbacks out. And that's what we need to do. So I think the Cowboys should use that 12th pick on a wide receiver. And the guy I like is a kid from Texas, Matthew Golden. And the reason I like him, he's a clutch receiver. He's durable. He played all 15 games. He's played only 1 year at Texas. because he transferred from Houston. He runs good routes. And Matt, he averaged 17 yards a catch. All right. When I played with the Cowboys, and me and Tony Hill, we had a competition between each other. Not how many catches we had, but how many yards per catch we had. Tony Hill finished his career with 16.8 yards per catch. I finished my career with 16 yards per catch. All right. So it's not the quantity of catches, it's the quality of catches. And that's what I think Matthew Golden needs. And we need to put some weapons around Dak Prescott, Matt, because, we lost Cooper, eventually. We lost Schultz. We lost Tony Pollard on offense. Zach Martin retired. We need to concentrate on the offense and give Dak, their $60 million a year quarterback, some weapons and let us compete with these other teams in the NFC East. And the thing that these other teams bring more than so than defense, yeah, they got good defense and good personnel, but they score. They got good offenses, And Jalen Daniels up there in Washington, they just picked up Deebo Samuels to go with McLaurin and their other receivers. So I think we should concentrate on that, and speed is what we need. And when you look at C.D. Lamb, he's been all pro and everything. He's over 100 catches every year. Let's take a little pressure off of him, because the wear and tear eventually is going to catch up to him. Because the difference is when you're man coverage, when you make a catch, Matt, you usually get hit by one guy. If you're in double coverage, you make a catch, you usually get by two guys, one hitting you low, one hitting you high, whatever. Usually two guys. So we need to preserve C.D. Lamb so we can have him, throughout his career, continue with the Cowboys. But also we need to help take some pressure off of him by having a threat at the other wide receiver position. And to make a long story short, Matt, I think Matthew Golden should be that pick if he happens to fall that far. Because with a 4.29 speed, Matt, I don't think you're going to last very long in that first round.
Yeah, and let's not confuse him with the other UT receiver who's very fast himself with a 4.39. That's Isaiah Bond, and as you've probably heard, Isaiah got himself in a bit of trouble up there in the Frisco area. I don't think the Cowboys need to be getting involved in that. Now, he'll go a little later in the draft, especially now that he's in some trouble. But I love that name, Golden, and I think that would be a great fit. And
Bond came in at 4.3, Matt. So even though he got in trouble, he'll still be considered, I guarantee you, because of that speed.
Yeah. Yeah, and Jerry loves a second. It's like if he can get value. What did I hate to always bring it up, but what did Lacewell tell me one time? I got a hold of Larry Lacewell after they signed T.O. and Lacewell delivered the famous line. He's like, if Jerry thinks it'll sell tickets, he would bring in Charles Manson.
You got that right. He even bring Drew Pearson back. He didn't even go that far.
Well, I tell you, Drew, I always love this. Now, let me tell everybody, Drew's got some appearances coming up via out there at the draft, and so there'll be some opportunities to see Drew out there in Frisco. Now, he'll be doing some media work with the team itself, and then also one of those Miller Lite situations. There'll be a big party, I know, going on out there, and Drew will be involved in that. So there's some opportunities coming up. And then, Drew, let me mention the Ultimate Hail Mary Show, and that is a podcast. Drew, as you've just heard, is still a lot of former greats. They just don't they're not still dialed into the game. Drew just told you about 7 names and is still extremely dialed in. And, again, that's why, boy, Galloway and I, Kalishaw and I, all the guys over the years I've done radio with and written with, that's how we first met, I think, Drew, when I was still a writer at the Dallas Morning News. And, by the way, I remember getting in trouble because – you know how the headline writers, they had put the triplets in the Ring of Honor. And, of course, Charlie Waters got torqued off and told me, hey, they're skipping the greats to put the new triplets in. And of course, that I don't write the headlines, as I've tried to explain people, Drew. And the headline on the morning news on that story was, Waters rips Jerry Jones. And I woke up the next morning.
Charlie needed.
Oh,
yeah,
Charlie was chewing on me like you can't imagine. I guess Mosley wants to go write for the National Enquirer. I woke up to hearing him say that on Hitzkiss's show. You can imagine a young Mosley at 27 or 28 hearing Charlie Waters getting after me on the radio. I'm like, now it wouldn't bother me, but back then, Drew, I thought my career was over. I thought, oh my gosh, Charlie's mad at me.
You got to go to that pain, Matt, to learn a lesson. Right? I bet you didn't do that anymore.
I know, and of course, nobody ever understands the whole. Oh, we don't write the headlines. They don't really accept that excuse. But okay, Drew, thank you. I mean, that was awesome. I knew it would be, but I always love catching up with you, and you are an incredible public speaker as well, and as people in my hometown found out a few years ago when you were kind enough to go make an appearance. But Drew, thank you very much, and man, good luck at the draft, and let's be in touch, okay?
You got it, Matt. Call my name, and I'll be there, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you.
He is a great... There he goes, the signature hut of Drew Pearson, the original 88, joining us on the Matt Mosley Show on the E-Radio Network. All right, coming up next, we will get back into the Masters, a huge breakthrough in Augusta. We'll react to that next.